Mitch.
Hello, welcome everybody. We are doing a special edition of DevOps Unbound. DevOps Unbound is a program that's part of Techstrong TV, something that we do 2 episodes a month. And we also do a live roundtable, which is really the same format, same conversation that we do in our recorded episodes, except the thing is very different is you all being part of this conversation. So it's very engaging. We encourage you to engage with us in chat, ask questions. We want to hear your comments. I agree with this, or here's something. Have we thought about this? I'd like to hear more about that. Whatever it is, we love you to post in chat, and we're going to be talking with you in the chat feature that's in our software. You'll see that kind of in the upper right of the software. If you just chat into the public chat area there, or you can use the Q&A button if you have a question to drop something in there. My name is Mitch Ashley. I'm CTO with Techstrong Group and also principal analyst with our research firm, Techstrong Research. Super excited because DevOps Unbound is a program that we have partnered with Tricentis, who's a fantastic company, amazing technology and testing. And we're going to hear a little bit about that, but our conversation is kind of the broader topic. But as a great partner working with Techstrong in producing the content and the guests and all the great ideas that go into these shows. So my hats off and thanks to Tricentis and to Lanier and Grigori, who was our first guest. You'll meet him in just a moment on our first episode of DevOps Unbound. Okay, so let's get to our topic. We're going to be talking about testing strategies in this environment of delivering software, moving to the cloud. What are the things that we kind of prepare ourselves for now that we've been doing this for a while and we've been operating in the cloud, or maybe some of us are new to that, or we need some help. Let's learn from each other and some of these modern test strategies. So we've got a fantastic panel. I'm going to drop that slide there. Won't put that up there, just our intro here. And we had a couple folks that couldn't join us. Unfortunately, Paloma Oliveira who had to step out at the last moment. And also Alan Shimo, my co-host, he's usually the person kicking these off. He's on some secret mission in the Greek islands. You know, it's one of these 007 things. I have no idea what he's doing, but he'll be back next time. And hopefully he'll be able to tell us a little bit about what he was doing without having to kill us, if that's part of it. So anyway, Alan sends his best wishes to everybody. And thanks for being here with us. Well, let's kick off with the introduction. Dr. Grigori Melnik, as I mentioned, is one of the thought leaders behind putting the show together, was on the first episode with Alan. And introduce yourself, Grigori, and also tell us a little bit about Tricentis.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Very excited to be back at DevOps Unbound, and thanks, Mitch, for re-inviting me. I'm Grigori. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of Tricentis. As some of you may know, Tricentis is the leading provider of testing tools. We have a continuous testing platform that covers everything from functional test automation to change event analysis and data integrity and performance testing and so on. I've been in this space for quite a while. In terms of the relevance of my experience to the today's topic, I've personally been part of several dozens of cloud migrations, including probably one of the first ones when it comes to Microsoft Azure itself. My team actually built the autoscaling engine, the very first autoscaling engine for Azure back in 2011. And then since I've been part of teams that help migrate Splunk to Splunk Cloud, MongoDB to MongoDB Atlas, and a number of additional SaaS products, and actually our own. Tricentis has been around for 2 decades. We have a large portfolio of tools, many of which have been historically on-prem, and now with the new wave and the new mode of using the tools and interaction, the way the world is going SaaSy, so to speak, we have actually migrated, and then not just migrated, also built a number of new tools specifically for SaaS. So good to be here. Very excited about today's panel.
Fantastic, Grigori. I remember that as your announcement. I was there at the 2011 Microsoft and now they're saying, how do you pronounce it? Is it Azure? I don't even know. It's a color, right? Boy, things have changed. Things have come a long way since those days.
Yeah, and back then we called it Windows Azure. So,
Windows, that's right.
yeah.
Oh, I forgot
And
about
now
that.
it's Microsoft Azure, because if you think about it, that's the dominant force and source of revenue for Microsoft as well. So.
Yep, absolutely. Awesome. Fantastic. A returning guest also for the second time. Lisette, welcome. Good to have you back with us. Introduce yourself. Tell us about you and a little bit of the work that you do.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited. My name is Lisette Zuno, and I'm currently the Director of Quality Engineering at Fort Robotic. I also own a consultancy, boutique consultancy firm called Zscore Solution that I started since 2019. I have about 20 year experience in the QA space, and related to the topic, I've been building QA organization for the last 12 years, and actually I started the cloud testing 10 years ago, in various spaces, building Q organization and usually being part of like a migration of the team, the organization trying to move from on-premise kind of like testing to moving all the application to the clouds. I've done that. American Heart Association, which was a 100-year organization. So a lot of things were really in legacy form. So I'm really excited to talk about that because that was a lot of challenge that I faced, and we were able to overcome them, using amazing modern testing strategy that we're going to talk about today. Also, I've done that currently in my current role, and the challenge and exciting part of it is it include embedded systems. So Fort Robotic is a company that have hardware, software, and also cloud-based application. And my team work with cross-functional team across the organization to do those kind of testing. So we have a SaaS application, we have an embedded system that we test on the cloud. So there's a lot of learning and exciting challenge that we are facing currently. So I'm excited to be here to talk about this and also learn from all of you guys. So thank you for having me back.
Fantastic. Embedded system. That brings a whole new wrinkle to things, doesn't it? That's
Yes.
for sure. Hardware. Okay, Will, bring it all in. Welcome back. Good having you again, Will Berry from Tricentis. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Will Berry. I'm a senior director of business engagement. My role at Tricentis has been working with several of our customers on their quality strategy as it comes to achieving their objectives and their goals as they seek to do better in the future. And a lot of that has involved moving into the cloud and leveraging our products, whether that is validating data, validating performance, or just the overall application usage to make sure that everything works as desired. I also do a lot of the marketing analysts analysis around the company to make sure that the products are fitting with what we are trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish.
Fantastic. Thanks everybody for jumping in on chat. Tell us where you're joining from, and be sure and comment along with your questions or ideas, reactions, etc., as we begin the conversation here. So, as you mentioned, Grigori, we've been doing this for a while, moving to the cloud. I think my first migration was probably around, not counting SaaS products, but our own technologies, about 2014 or so was the first app I put up. And, that was still early days. Things were a little rough back then, but we've learned a lot of lessons. So why don't we kick things off with, testing always has plenty of time to get software released out the door. We never squeeze testing, time in the project cycle. Irony, satire. Probably the same thing happens in the cloud too, right? When we're moving applications and getting ready, there's a lot of things to do. And oftentimes you don't know all the things that you probably should be doing until after you've gone through the process. So let's start things off by maybe what some of the planning activities are, but also the activities when we might actually be doing some work in the cloud before we actually go through a migration. Grigori, if you would start us off, that'd be great. And everybody, it's not hub and spoke. Please join in with each other, comment, ask each other. You don't need me to move on to each question. So join right in. Grigori?
Yes, sure. So I'm going to start by saying that I actually think that most teams do recognize the importance of ensuring that their core business processes or applications that they move to the cloud continue to operate intact. And even if people do think about testing, they seem to focus a lot on the functional aspect of those applications, of those flows. Um, the um, uh, the important aspect here is to make sure that you're thinking about everything holistically. So you go way beyond just the functional aspect. And the reason people tend not to think about it is because I think there's part of this over reliance on what the hyperscalers or the cloud service providers market to us, right? When I start talking about the cloud migration and cloud testing strategy, holistic strategy, and I bring things like scalability and performance, sometimes I hear the reactions like, wait a second, no, but hey, AWS and Azure, they guarantee this many nines and this type of performance and this services. Isn't it their responsibility? Isn't it what I'm paying for? If I'm going to be relying on all these foundational cloud services, it's kind of in their it's their job to make sure it works. And of course, that's not the case, regardless of how mature services are that you're taking advantage and taking dependency on. Still, it's your responsibility. It's your app. You need to think about all of this end to end, and of course, all kinds of aspects that you are usually testing for. Both functional and parafunctional concerns need to be part of your strategy. But additionally, you need to include in there protocols and procedures that are actually associated with dealing with the cloud providers themselves, right? So again, it's something that people never plan for. It's like, well, in the old world of me owning the data center, me owning my performance test rig, if we were to take performance testing as an example, I own everything. I plan things out. I think about workloads. I think about the flows. I think about my hypotheses, my questions, my metrics, all of it. But I'm kind of fully in charge. Then you try to do the same kind of thing on the system that has been migrated to the cloud, and you can't even do that because the hyperscaler might simply consider your perfectly legitimate performance test as a denial of service attack. So there has to be certain signaling and coordination. That's the word I was looking for. Coordination with your hyperscaler partners to make sure that your testing efforts are being executed as planned. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. You brought up a number of good things there. I'm curious, Lisa, your experience too. That's the unknown unknowns, right? That always get us. And that's afterwards we said, well, I wish I would have gone online and checked out these services or not made this assumption. What kind of lessons are you thinking about from your experiences?
Yeah, I'm trying to go back, and I think the infrastructure or the lack of understanding, back in the days of knowing like what is the infrastructure giving us, what are we getting when we moving our app to the cloud, and it's not like there's this quote from Einstein, right? It's not the same thing that you are doing. If you continue doing the same thing and you're gonna get the same result, it's gonna get you in trouble. So you have to have a different mindset when you're moving your application to the cloud. And that mindset is not only just the infrastructure, but it's the availability of the app, how often and how uh the reliability that is around, having your app up at all time. And when you start thinking about testing, how do we couple that into our strategy, right? So you have to start thinking about what are the apps that need to be available and how often they need to be available, and what is the strategy that we want to put around that. Start looking at the critical part of your app that need to always be up, and that's when we come to automated testing. Automated testing is I think that's when automated testing actually became something that people start value a lot more, because now you want to be able to run your tests all the time as much as possible, because you have that infrastructure that is allowing you to do that, right? You have your CI pipeline that you can run your tests on. So now, and a new investment come to the organization of like actually invest in automating testing, because in the past you didn't have that ability. So those are things that, you know, we were bringing to organization as a new way of thinking. So it also take resources, you know. Hello, it take resources to build all those automated tests, to be able to not only, because as Gregory was mentioned, now we have the infrastructure. What can we do? You know, what is the infrastructure giving power to do, right? Because for me, I've always tell organization, yeah, you're paying for AWS, you're paying for Azure DevOps, but these are like available for you. So let's leverage that in a way where I can always be testing my application. I can always give you all these metrics, but there need to be an investment from the organization, from resource perspective as well.
Yeah, I'm curious. One of the things that there's some influential talks that really kind of opened my eyes about the cloud originally, and one of them was not thinking sort of fixed resources. Right? We know the cloud's scalable and quote unquote infinite resources, but it isn't just that you can scale things up. You can set up multiple environments. You can kind of A/B test things. You can one of the things that I remember learning early on was, you know, your application really well because you've been living with it, right, for a long time, for quite a while, or maybe it's relatively new, but you still know it well. You sort of know where the fragility is, or the pain points are, or, you know, data quality issues, or failures tend to happen, and those are all things you can immediately know to plan for. Going into it. So there are a lot of things you already know about your app and technologies and platforms that you're using.
Right. Yeah. But I think that does change when you move to the cloud, right? Like it is a new landscape. And I think that you have to kind of reassess and you have to reevaluate. I think that as a species, we are eternally optimistic that things are going to be all right. It's what has allowed us to do these great land migrations that we've done and spread across the globe. But every single time it presents new challenges, new learnings, and you have to adapt and you have to overcome. So I think with the cloud, you know, there's a trust but verify, you know, factor to it, that you have to anticipate some of this change and these new demands, and then kind of embrace and learn as you go.
Jump right in. Whoever wants to comment on that.
Well, sorry, were you finished with your thought
Yeah.
there?
Go
Sorry, I
for it.
wasn't sure for a second. You froze. I was like, wait a second. Okay, I see. Yeah, I fully agree. And actually, one thing that, Mitch, you just mentioned, I couldn't help but jump in when you said you typically live within your applications, because I use the same verb when I encourage our teams to, you know, to bring quality products to market. It's remarkable. I have to tell you, it's remarkable how many people, especially, you know, when you're thinking about this notion of the whole team being responsible for the quality, as opposed to just, oh, this is just the testers or the QA department, and we're going to throw things over the wall and they're going to do that testing and tell us everything that's wrong with the product, and we're going to, you know, safely ignore all of that recommendations. Now, when it's the whole team approach, it's remarkable how many people actually don't live inside their products and don't spend enough time. And again, this is my message specifically to product managers and product owners. Your job is not to translate the requirements and wrangle Jira tickets. You actually have to experience and live inside the product and truly experience it as close to as what your end users are, and I cannot emphasize that enough. And again, thinking about all aspects of those systems, including the user experience itself, not just, again, the utilitarian aspect of functionality and the algorithmics and all of it, but the overall user experience, especially these days, seems to be the dominant factor when companies win. So yeah.
Another approach about moving to the clouds that I want to bring up is obviously the ability to have various environment, right? And to the point of collective ownership, that's what I like to call it. Like, I think the cloud give us that ability to say, okay, we all have collective ownership. So whether the application is in development, whether it's in staging or in QA or in pre-production, whatever environment it is, anybody in the organization should be able to go and put their hands on the application and live in it, and understand it and tested it. And also give us ability to have our customer closer to us now, because you have all this environment that you can spin up, infrastructure, this environment that you can monitor also the usage and also the load. I've done a couple of projects a couple of years ago on load testing, right? And even if you have unlimited resource as we think, it still costs you money, right? But you also want to know your maximum concurrent user that your application can handle at any given time. And a lot of application developer organization, they don't think about that, because they're not in the maybe Taylor Swift moment situation that we discussed a couple of weeks ago. But you have to think about the maximum that your application can handle at any given time. And that is also one of the things that the cloud give you advantage of these days.
It's a good point because you've got a lot more resources. You can scale things up in the cloud. You might also still be limited pretty seriously by your application. Like if you're taking a monolith to the cloud, that scaling a massive app is still a massive app even if it's in the cloud. So you may be getting some benefits. You might also have to be making some changes down the road to start to really leverage some of that scalability too.
Exactly. And that's why most of the lift and shift efforts, when people have this naive belief that we can just, take the old app and just wrap it and just host it somehow and put this, veneer around it, and it's going to suddenly, perform at a higher scale. It's not going to do that, right? If the app has not been architected, if it hasn't been built to be highly scalable, no cloud is going to give it to you. So you often have to go and look deeper, and that's why again companies eventually come to the realization that you need to do more serious refactoring. Sometimes even getting all the way to the entire app modernization and rewrite. Because again, the other thing to remember is that it's not just the app itself; it's everything else that the app depends on, right? Mm-hmm. It's all the layers. So it's like, hey, now I'm moving my app, but what about my data tier? Oh, wait a second, I was on IBM DB2 or SQL Server whatever version 6.0, which is apparently no longer even supported, and there's no such service. Oh, but there is a service, SQL service available. Well, it's not the same, right? It's not the same, and even if it was the same, then you have to take under consideration, and that's another area that people always underestimate the amount of effort it takes to actually do that, is to bring all the data. The whole data migration aspect of any cloud migration arguably is a much, much, much bigger challenge than simply ensuring that the functionality is there, right? Because again, you never start your system from the null state. You never get the luxury of empty tables or collections or whatever, right? And you have to move, and along the way you have to move not just the data, not just the tuples or whatever. You actually have to move everything around it, stored procedures and triggers and alerts and the entire ETL pipelines, and those are often messy. So those are often being created over and adjusted and modified and grown like those Frankenstein monsters over decades, with many different people, leaving their fingerprints, and many different consulting teams that are no longer even available to provide any input or guidance on what was that meant to be. And again, those are some really, really crazy. I've seen some of those, SQL statements with, I'm not going to say it's the best necessarily practice or pattern, but dozens or hundreds of joins and many, many pages. That's like a single query inside the transformation pipeline. So the data data migration, data integrity, data aspects of cloud migration should be the top of mind of yours. That's for sure.
I totally agree. I mean, the amount of heartache that I've had doing cloud migration, but mostly, late last minute realizing that the challenge is really the data, because the application, yes, we can do that, eventually easily we can test it, we can bring it up, but then moving all our customer data from an older platform to a new one, everything you mentioned is totally, but I always like the team to see the advantage that they're getting, right? Because you can get in this tug of war with your team that they don't think it's important, because because of all the heartburn that you just lay out clearly. So it's important to show what is the advantage that you get, when you move your data to the cloud. Your ability to synthesize the data, that's important in the future. Ability for, especially for us tester, right? Ability to have masking of different data when you are testing, that's great thing for us too. And then also generation of data on the fly when you're testing is also very important. And then you can get into like data visualization, so there's a lot of advantage. So usually when I talk to team about data migration, I try to show them where you're going and what are the advantage that you're going to get on the other side, because the challenge is enormous as you have laid them out. But that's something that have to be definitely top of mind.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the term lift and shift because it makes it sound so easy. It makes it sound like you're just moving a box from one room to another.
UPS comes over and does that for you, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's more like you're taking the box and dumping it on the ground, and all your stuff's out now, and you got to try to figure out where it all landed. And I think that one more to add to data integrity is the performance capabilities, right? You're not only going to incur the cost if your application scales incorrectly from the cloud consumption, but there's also typically a lot of vendor licensing that you're paying for as well. So if you're scaling out an application with your vendor, then you're also going to be paying there as well as paying for the cloud. So you can basically get double dinged in that whole process. So making sure that you have kind of that correct approach to ensuring the data and the application works, and then making sure you're protected from the scale that you're basically opening yourself up to as well.
Data is tricky. I'm sort of stating the obvious there, but sometimes it's something that you can immediately flip over. Other times you can do some A/B testing, sort of be able to flip environments where that data is being pulled from, either on-prem, even though you've moved the app to the cloud, or data in the cloud. But you can also move some things in your kind of data environment to the cloud even before the apps go, like data lakes and things like that, decision support system, data analytics. You can start to push some of those things up there ahead of time if that makes sense in your strategy. So data, yeah, I mean, data loss and migration is not good for anyone's career. So, tread lightly, right?
I just wanted to add to what Will said about the kind of planning and modeling and thinking about your performance and scale and the impact that will have, to your bottom line and the overall cloud infrastructure costs, COGS, and all of that. It's crucial. It's absolutely crucial to think about it ahead of time. Again, there's many examples nowadays where companies have grossly underestimated the cloud infrastructure costs, and again, those can amount very quickly. So one thing to think about is that when you have what we found, when you have a solid performance testing strategy in place, and you're thinking about how you're going to test for performance, you can actually reuse those artifacts as well as the tools for actually doing modeling of your solution economics. And you can tie it and you can think about it, and then as a result, you can then put the appropriate guardrails in your cloud infrastructure, or even use additional tooling for doing the performance and the usage monitoring to make sure that you operate within the economic parameters and your business continues to strive. So
That's
Yeah,
oftentimes a service that cloud providers will do to help you get on their
yeah,
service as a third party to help you. What are the costs going to be, and
sure.
trying
Yeah,
to project that, right?
yeah, and then they can monitor and then see, okay, something is underutilized, let's deprovision, or hey, you're taking advantage of more expensive service when you're actually not doing anything that any of that superior functionality that the service provides, and you could be better off with a much simpler and cheaper service. And because again, remember nowadays all these hyperscalers, they offer hundreds and hundreds of services, and many of them are overlapping, right? AWS itself offers
Mm-hmm.
what, a dozen of different databases. Well, which one do you choose? It's
Mm-hmm.
easy to jump right into the RDS, probably one of the most expensive ones there. But do you really need it? Especially if you are doing something, I don't know, managing cache or just using it for dumping your blob, and much cheaper S3 storage may be more appropriate. In case of Azure, again, are you going to use the SQL service or are you going to use the Azure blob table? So again, thinking about the selection of the right service and kind of right sizing, right fitting it for your purpose is important. And then once you do that, still, again, as you start doing your performance test, it actually gives you a pretty good picture of what you should anticipate in terms of the loads, and you can extrapolate it into the actual spend and think about the cost of running your service longer term. There's one other.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
go ahead. No, you go ahead. I was going to switch to
Well,
another point, but go ahead with your question.
We maybe this is where you're going. I'd love to talk, because I want to bring this up. Is these things don't happen in isolation, right? You are examining, well, what services are in the cloud? Do we bring the tools that we have, or to go from an on-prem to a SaaS version of the same tool? Do we containerize and wrap it up and take it with us, or use something else? And there's always the excitement of, well, I've got some new things and greater, better things I might be able to do. But there's also, how much change do you want to make as part of the migration versus, maybe I want to take, just to pick an open source, Prometheus, and I'm going to take that and containerize it and move it with me. And then I'll look at it as something else beyond that, or maybe in conjunction when I get there. So talk about some of those trade-offs. I'd love to hear too, Lisette and Will, your thoughts on, like, if you were going to examine some things to consider that you might want to change, or the factors to considering that, what would those things be? Because you can't go after all the shiny objects at once.
Yeah, totally. You can go after the shiny object, and you also have to look at what is the level of change your organization can take, because it's a lot of work, and these are not happening in a vacuum. I've never been in an organization where we're doing a migration and we're not releasing new application, so this is always in tandem with we're doing the lift and shift, so-called, but we also releasing applications. So I like to come up with a strategy, with like a plan for the organization, where we say this is what we're going to do phase one, and then phase two, these are the tools that we're going to start looking at, and try to make sure, when I'm talking about tools that are part of the ecosystem, so that there's no new shift, major shift happening, right? So look at where you're going. If it's Azure Dev or AWS, what are the tools that are, most of tools these days are all, tightly integrated and works well. But also look at the learning curve for your team. How much it's going to take the folks that you bring in these new tool to actually learn them, right? And I'm a huge fan of metrics, so I'm always looking at, okay, if folks need to learn something, how soon can we start getting metrics to show the return on investment of everything that we are doing? Because there's nothing like you move stuff to the cloud and then your application are not working, right? And everything is failing. So always try to keep some metrics in front of the team so that know they can strive to it. But those are the way that I usually strategize and think about these kind of thing, because it's a long journey. I've been in an organization where this took us like 3 to 4 years to even get to close to saying that we are in good shape. And that was not even like through the whole DevOps pipeline that we wanted. It's just for us to like now migrate everything in the cloud and then start building our CI pipeline, and then start having our automated tests run, on a regular basis. So it's a long journey. It's a long journey.
And when you say those learnings for your team, we mean the again, not only the devs, not only the engineers,
No,
not only
everybody,
the
the
ones
whole
making
organization.
decisions, but cloud ops, right? Your
Yes,
cloud ops, the support organization needs
everybody
to get up to speed on all of this, because it's like, yeah, sounds great. Let's containerize everything. Well,
but they have
what
to
about
learn
the
it.
rest of the team that needs to do the ongoing maintenance on this when you guys are off to the next shiny, set of capabilities? So this is the one that is key.
And
All the
another
way up
thing
to
that I
the
want to
CIO and CTO and
Sure.
CISO too, right? It's not just the
And
hands-on
another
folks.
part that I want to add is documentation. I think the DevOps State of DevOps report 2019 or 2020, if I'm recalling, mentioned that documentation was one of the game changer for a organization that are transforming, currently doing DevOps transformation. So for me, I'm always like putting documentation. Right now, we are doing moving our embedded system team to the cloud, meaning like putting their build all the build artifacts available for them to take it from the cloud to load it on the different device. So documentation, we slide in documentation after each milestone, so that the team has something that they can go to and follow all the documentation to be able to follow, what is that DevOps engineer building for them right now. So it's huge important to have the documentation, because when people leave the organization and they have done such a great work and there's no documentation when they leave behind, it's almost like you start over. And I'm not a huge fan of that, starting over, because it's a waste of time.
Can be painful. There's some great questions I'd like to wrap into our conversation. And one of them's around, what about end-to-end testing? Is that still a good practice to take with you into the cloud? When we talk about modernizing testing strategies, it may also be a good time to think about, we could, instead of taking some linear processes with us, start to break a few of those apart and be able to do that in environments, because we've got more options for us in the cloud. But I'm curious about your thoughts. Maybe, Will, if you want to jump in first on testing strategies themselves. We've mentioned performance testing and that type of thing, but do we change a lot when we think about testing moving to the cloud, or bring what we have and add more?
I think you definitely want to, in this opportunity, kind of restructure and like replay like what you're going to do. Now, from what strategies are you going to do? All of the above, right? Like you're still going to have to do end-to-end testing. You're still going to need to do unit. You're still going to need to do integration. I think what it comes down to is like how I create the right scope, because if any one of those, if you do too much or too little, it becomes problematic, and you could end up basically spending your entire life maintaining unit tests across an entire code repository and not getting much work done in the actual development area. So making sure that you have the right scope in each one of these and the right roles and responsibilities assigned to it. And then I think the other key thing is what is your end goal? For what we do with a lot of our organizations and the customers we work for, it's focused on building something from an entire, company perspective. So end to end becomes critical, because a company like Home Depot isn't a conglomeration of just independent apps. It's how data and processes flow through all those apps to make Home Depot what it is, to make Home Depot its brand. So when you think about kind of your end mission statement, it will kind of prioritize certain things for you in terms of what you need to do. So in that case, end to end becomes very important, because it is who they are.
Other thoughts on testing strategy? We've talked a lot about performance testing. I'm curious on that. And what about security?
Oh, absolutely. That's another aspect that you must have as part of the broader testing strategy. And with security testing in the cloud, you get a whole bunch of new angles and new parameters to work with. But again, not just security, but also governance and everything in terms of now, again, remember, you're not just owning and managing everything on your own. You have third-party players. Hyperscalers are a big part of your deployment there. So, and again, so security testing with all kinds of specific practices around from static analysis to dynamic analysis to stress testing and penetration testing and fuzzing and all of that. That has to be part of your bigger strategy for sure.
Yeah, and I will also add that nothing really changed in terms of testing for us. When you go to the cloud, it's just you have to be tightly with your application. So I will add that make sure you also have a lot of sanity test case around, right? Because that will allow you to always check availability of your application at any given time. So these are things that you can run automated all the time. I think I see a question about division of labor. That's always a great question. Division of labor, should we do unit testing? Unit testing is definitely important. That is, like, for me, it's like a foundation of your automation. So I'm always asking organization to invest more on the unit testing so that we have less time spent on the integration and also on the rest of testing that need to happen. So yeah, unit testing does not change when you move to the cloud. It's just amplified and give more tools, and even for security testing, you should already be doing security testing when you are on premise. So you just have more tool available to you when you move to the cloud with security testing. So in terms of like testing strategy, you just simplify what you were already doing, and make sure that it's tidy couple, and then you have the infrastructure to back you up now to do all that.
There's a lot of questions in the chat, and they're asking kind of variations about what about this kind of testing? Do we still do this? To your point about the division of labor, one of the things I want to throw out there is, and I don't mean this as a panacea, but to me, the cloud is about getting the real benefit out of it is through automation. I don't mean automating every test. Yes, we have automated testing. We have a lot of manual testing, different kinds of testing. But one of the things that the cloud does for you that you may not have fully accessible to you in your own data center, private data center, is almost all of those services, plus the things you're doing, the tools and the environments and third-party services are accessible through code, through scripts. And you can set up environments. You can change how you might be running your tests, different kinds of test environments through automation. So it's a good time to kind of think about how you might structure those a little bit differently, because to get scale, it's not just more hardware and network capacity and storage, right? It's people. That's the real scale in how you grow your applications. And so you do that by kind of doing some of that work a little bit differently and automating some things. I'd love to hear you disagree with that. You think that's like pie in the sky, thinking there, or is that practical experience from your perspective?
No, it's absolutely practical experience, and automation helps build out that, what I call safety net. Especially if you're thinking from the angle of regression testing. But one aspect that we haven't talked about is that as you keep building up and producing more and more of all kinds of tests, whether again it's at the level of units or all the way to the end-to-end or performance, etc., you must be thinking about the maintenance now, not just of your app, but maintenance of your test, of the test suite. Because again, it's not uncommon to see those grow into thousands, tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands tests that are covering just like a few basic workflows, and then you start looking at how that sprawl of test artifacts occurs. And if you don't have a sound strategy of how to manage it, how to maintain it, if you're not thinking about how you abstract the high-level business process definition from the mappings and the fixtures that help you drive the actual automation, very, very quickly what happens is that your tests become brittle and break. And then all that investment, and then we've seen that over and over again, where all these test automation initiatives, they start with the big fanfares, and you get a lot of initial investment put in there, and then 6 months later it starts falling apart, and then the teams haven't planned that this is, again, the process is continuous, right? The process continues. Yes, the fact that you might have invested here doesn't mean that you're done just from that single initiative investment. And you need to think about, again, well, what am I going to do with this? Are these still delivering value? Should I actually deprecate some of this? Should I go refine them? Should I use a different approach or elevate some of these tests so it's easier for us to move forward? Should I start looking at additional tools that help me maintain those? Right? You've heard a lot of latest hype around the AI, driven everything, even with the vision of the fully autonomous test design, which again I think it's a bit of a sci-fi today. But as far as the AI assistance to what we're doing, it's definitely there, and will play a much more important role there. But again, if you're not thinking about maintaining your artifacts, it's very likely you're going to end up with the additional problem at your hands, beyond just maintaining your system itself.
And I have one more thing to add to that: transferability. Like, are you able to allow others to take responsibility and ownership of what you're creating from a test standpoint? Because as you evolve, as you need to prioritize different things, you're going to also need to hand off certain things to other teams and other resources within your organization. So that transferability, that resource versatility is going to be critical in terms of testing, because you don't want testing to just disappear the day that you can no longer own it. Like, it needs to be able to evolve in your organization and move through the life cycle with the application. So really critical to make sure that works as well.
Hey, I just want to mention, folks, be sure to stick around. We're going to have some gift cards to give away before we get to the end of our out together. So we'll be announcing that in just a little bit. Let's time shift a bit. We've talked about kind of planning and things to do ahead of time and things we can be doing while we're in the cloud. In the DevOps world, we talk about day 2 DevOps, right? So now you've done your release and you've been able to go through a process using sort of a DevOps approach and CI/CD and different tools. What about after we've moved to the cloud? We've done that testing, we've got the apps up there, gotten things stable, or maybe that is the first kind of focus, right? Is just making sure that we think it's stable, but how do we know? And what are the things we might want to consider do next? So think about a day 2 cloud. What are the things we might do there? Lisa, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. Day 2 looks like continuous monitoring. You got to continuously monitor your application, make sure that you get feedback. And for me, I think those feedback are crucial from a quality perspective, because again, start looking at the data, use the various tool that you can, Nagios, Prometheus, whatever tool you have at your, and sometimes that's maybe the moment to invest even in better tool, right? Integrate tool to actually get those feedback. But the feedback is really about the performance, it's about the stability, it's about the user behavior also, and that will enable your team to really get informed and make other better decision. And that's really, I like to talk about 360 feedback, because those feedback that you get, those are data information that you can use to really improve on the application and product that you have. So I think that's really what, for me, what day 2 look like. It's really the ability to also quickly address issue, because we know that issue can arise right after you go live and you on the other side. So also having the ability through your pipeline to be able to quickly reproduce an issue that come, and also able to quickly release and keep your app alive, for customer. That's crucial as well.
Yeah, I think one other thing is what is your level of ready to test? Like, what is your speed of testing? Because with cloud, you're offloading a lot of responsibility to that cloud provider to maintain certain, infrastructure and other components. A security patch is going to happen immediately. So what impact does that have to your application? Do you know if you are not ready to test? So that whole idea of being able to, accelerate your test cycles, being ready to test because you want to be able to react to the change of the cloud is going to be extremely important as well.
Yeah, all the good points. And again, kind of tying back to uh, monitoring and observability and all of it is something that I've seen people don't don't pay attention immediately, but then again, at the end, it bites you, and I know it because I keep seeing those invoices from the providers. Look at your data retention policies or the settings. When it comes to logs and everything else, people sometimes go with the defaults, and those defaults are absolutely not needed, and you can save a lot by reducing it, because again, if you're looking at the troubleshooting, maybe a week or a month of data is sufficient as opposed to 6 months. And of course that's different for the regulated industries and mission critical, safety critical, other things. But again, don't assume that the defaults suggested by the underlying services that you're taking advantage of are the right ones for you. And again, monitoring can create another flood, no pun intended, another flood of data for you to deal with. So again, almost like test or performance test your monitoring infrastructure just as you test your own systems.
It's a really good point too, because I'm talking about the early days of migrating the cloud as compared to where we are now. Cloud providers are experienced at moving applications, businesses that are operating in more regulated environments than maybe they were back then. And while you just don't assume that it'll all be done for you, you can get a lot of benefit if you work with a provider, work with your system integrator, whoever it is, to help make sure you're set up for compliance, that you've got the right attestations for reporting, whatever that might be, whether it's security or testing or all those things, environment control, all of that kind of thing. So don't go into it and see you get it all for free. It might be there, but you have to know how to use it too. I want to announce the winners of our gift card here, and then we're about 10 minutes, a little less than 10 minutes left in our time. And ask our panelists to check in chat. I have the question I'm going to ask you to wrap up on in the presenters chat. Our gift card winners of our $25 Amazon gift card for winners are Bonnie W., Sunil G., Elise A., and Danielle L. So the great team here at Techstrong will reach out to you about how to get a hold of those digital gift cards and be able to have a little bit of summer fun spending money here. Maybe plant something in the garden, have a good time with it. So congratulations to our winners. So I thought a good way to wrap this up would be, it's always hard to say, well, kind of this is the biggest thing that I learned, but I'm going to ask you that anyway. For each of you, what is kind of the biggest lesson you've learned about both migrating and operating in the cloud? Having been there for a while, maybe several years now, that if you wanted to share with somebody, like, this is the one thing you should know, and you'll find, and I hope it's good, or whatever, you avoid that or whatever that might be. Will, do you want to start in first, and then how about Lisette, and we'll wrap with you, Grigori.
Perfect. Yeah, for me, it's been let your pioneers be pioneers. They're going to typically know what they need to do within that cloud, and then help shepherd some of your larger, slower moving departments into the cloud. And one way to be able to do that is being able to give trust in that quality process, so that they're confident that when they get there, things will work. So there's going to be some people that are just going to understand how things work, and there's going to be some people that you're going to have to coach and ensure the quality around how things work, and making sure that you take the right time to work with them, build the right quality strategy is going to be big.
Yeah, for me, I would say start with a plan. Sounds simple, but that's where usually, I feel like organization, they just start. They make the lifting without having a clear plan, and the plan depend on really the level of maturity that the organization have. Because maturity come with going to the cloud, right? So really determine where you guys are here, and then how you're going to get to the next level, and take the time to really make sure that the folks in your organization are also ready to be part of this change, because it will require a little bit of a change of mindset. Shift left testing is quite something that we talk about a lot, because having your application in the cloud, things go a little bit more rapidly because of the infrastructure that you have. So make sure that you know your team, your folks, your resource in the organization are also ready for this transformation that you're about to embark on.
Great points. And for me, and I think I alluded to that earlier, start with your data migration assessment, your plans, thinking about migration risks and the overall kind of data strategy early, like today, if you haven't yet. That's as far as the testing is concerned. And again, there's a bunch of other lessons learned, but you asked for one. But from the operational perspective, or just the overall approach to cloud migration, I think the biggest one that I can offer is forget about multi-cloud. Pick one, make yourself successful in one. I've seen so many initiatives, again, where people just, spread too wide and they don't realize it's not the same. It's not the same. You're just, exponentially increasing the complexity of your efforts, and definitely your quality engineering, your testing efforts, your monitoring, everything, when you are trying to be in all three. And yes, at some point, at some level of maturity, the multiple clouds might be justified, especially if you're trying to give this optionality to your customers or your systems. But for most business process, perhaps picking one and deciding, kind of sticking with it, and really taking advantage of it and driving it well, and focusing on a single cloud is probably the biggest lesson learned that I can share with you.
That might be too many cats in one bag. Trying to do multi-cloud all at once in the beginning. Just if I can offer my own perspective to that too, is I think there's one of the principles of quality management, principles of DevOps, the idea of continuous improvement, continuous learning, moving to the cloud, migrating them and operating in this environment isn't a data center move. It's not like those are a lot of work too, but there's some things that apply, but a lot of things that don't. So there's a ton of learning that's happening, as each of you mentioned, all the way up and across the organization, right? Everybody's learning a whole bunch of things all at once. And so that kind of plan, do, check, act, take some time to reflect on, okay, how are we doing? Is this what we were expecting? What have we learned about this so far? Does that alter our course, right? Maybe in a minor way, maybe in a few big ways here and there as you get into it. The worst thing you can do is stick with a plan that's a bad plan now that you've got it. But no plan is accurate, by the way. Every plan is wrong, because once you get in the field and you get in action, the plan needs to change. So use that learning to help inform and drive and help your success, increases your success as you move to the cloud and operate there. Well, this has been fantastic. I have to say again, thanks, Grigori, for you and the Tricentis team, and Will for kicking this off with us, DevOps Unbound, this series and roundtable, and we have many more to come. Some great topics and episodes coming up. So check out Techstrong.tv. You will see DevOps Unbound there right under the series menu, or you see it on the main page. There's also other live roundtables like this that we have that you can go back and engage with. So a lot of great content and great guests like we've had today. Lisa, thank you so much. It's a pleasure having you in all that you bring to the conversation. Someone who's living the dream. I hope it's a dream. Living the dream every day, and sharing that with us, and Will too, your perspective from working with all the customers that you do at Tricentis. So Grigori, as one of the elder statesmen here of DevOps Unbound, if I can refer to you that way, any parting thoughts you want to share with our audience before we sign off?
Be bold, be brave, but again, plan ahead, and may the cloud force be with you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
Oh, wow. Boy, you're talking my game here. All right, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the privilege of your attention, and thank you, Mitch, for moderating this panel. Always pleasure.
Oh,
thank you for having us.
It's a joy,
Appreciate
and you are amazing. Isn't our audience amazing? All the comments and interaction we've had, and that happens every time in these roundtables. And
Yes.
you know,
Very engaging. Very
Yes.
engaging. Thank you, guys.
yes,
Thank
as
you.
Lee said, it's hard to keep all of it in all the
Yeah.
balls in the air, right? But we somehow do it. So thanks everybody for joining us today. Please join us on another episode. Please spend some time connecting with the Tricentis folks and all the great technology and expertise and knowledge they have as well. So goodbye, everyone. We'll see you on our next DevOps Unbound. Take care.
Thank
Be
you.
well.
Bye.